everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this new vlog that I am trying out. My name is Jason Cupp, and you are watching Cup Talks. You can see that, can't you? Yep, Cup Talks. You've heard about TED Talks. Well, this is Cup Talks, and we are going. What I'm going to want to do with all this is to um, show my opinion, give my opinion on different things, and I am a very opinionated individual, and I there are several things that I am opinionated about. That's religion. I'm very strong. I'm a Christian. Politics. I am a conservative Republican. Sports. I'm a big Reds and Bengals fan, and of course, and a little bit of music too, but probably not a lot of what I would talk about. The two main things I'll probably talk about are something to do with religion and politics. It might be a lot of politics, especially since it's a presidential election year. But today we are starting off with religion. I see the N is backwards. I'm still trying to master writing backwards or forwards. Um, the title of my vlog today is, there we go, Does God Exist? And that's something that's been asked for thousands of years. You know, it depends on what your opinion is. You may think that this whole thing is just happened. Just, poof, hey, there's everything. And there are people out there that believe in God created this and this and this and this, or the biblical account of creation. I do believe in the biblical um, recollection of creation. And I know that, and I've got some things I'll bring up here in a second, but try to understand that in my opinion, God created everything. And when he created everything, he created science, he created time, he created everything. And so when you see something that says, on the first day he did this, we don't know how long that day was. It may have been 24 hours. It may have been 2,000 years. Because there's a part of scripture says 1,000 days is like 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like a year, something like that. I'd have to look up exactly where that's at. I don't have that on me, but that's my opinion. Is that the Earth is a living, breathing creation of God that is pretty much it's the bomb diggity. That's funny. Believe me, this is new for me too. So if I see Mike at 20 years from now, if I'm still doing this, and I see this very first one, I'll be like, oh, man, that was bad. But because of the fact that I've only got a limited amount of time to talk, I want to get this out and get it on and get it going. So this is my opinion. God created the heavens and the earth, and that's just no doubt about that. There is no such thing as just something happening, because everything, including the universe, has to have a cause, but cannot itself be the cause. For example, the universe just couldn't create itself. And the consensus is that our universe, in fact, did have a cause. It did come into existence. And in my opinion, the way that it was created would utilize, and the consensus goes along that this is kind of what happened. It all depends on who's behind it. I believe in a Big Bang. I don't believe in the Big Bang that everything just went poof, and there was life, and there was the universe, and there was everything else. I think God said, okay, I'm going to create this. Boom! There's the universe. That's what I think happened. Now, I ain't no thinking. That is what happened. And I know there's a consensus of that being the case. Now, since we know that the universe exists and has, but has not always existed, it's either the fact that it's either always existed or something outside the universe has always existed. And since God is the only thing that is outside of the universe, then God has to be the cause for life. God has to be the cause of life. So that right there is it. God created the heavens and the earth. Now you may ask, where did God come from? And that's a question that we can never fully answer or understand. And I'll tell you why. God is outside the universe, so he's outside of time. He's outside of space. He's outside of all this stuff. And when we think about God in his timing and his existence, God doesn't just exist. He always has been. Now you think it'd be easier to think if somebody was born and lived forever. That's a little more. That's a little bit easier to comprehend. But to think back and to think, wow, where did God come from? Who created God? What created God? Well, God is the creator. Nobody created God. There is no creator of the uncreated creator. In other words, God is and God has always been. And because of the fact is that our human minds are so small and cannot comprehend what the origin of God and what that whole situation, you can't. You'd hurt yourself. You'd be sitting there with a headache 24/7 trying to think out, where did God come from? God's everywhere. God is everything. And he doesn't have a beginning because he's not part of the universe. The universe does have that. God is outside the universe. He does not have to worry about that. Now, I'll read some scripture here for you for a second. And this actually tells you that the universe's existence is contingent upon a greater cause, and that transcends time, space, matter, and energy. Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:3 reads like this. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, time, God created the heavens, space, and the earth, matter. And Genesis 1:3 says, let there be light, which is energy. So that right there states that God created, and it's right there. God created everything. It's right in there. And say that the Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, it doesn't give us an opportunity to think about how that happened. It doesn't even give us room to think, well, maybe this is what happened. It's in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So it's not a case where God has allowed us any kind of space to think about this. It just point blank, the Bible starts out by saying, point blank, God did this. Now, part of the universe is also the earth. And the earth is perfectly made, perfectly placed, and perfectly equipped to sustain all life. The earth's size is perfect. It's about 24,900 miles around the equators and almost the same amount this way through the poles. If Earth was any smaller, we would not be able to sustain an atmosphere. Like Mercury does not have an atmosphere and is smaller than Earth, obviously. And Jupiter is bigger than us. So if the Earth was bigger than it is now, or was created, then we would have a poisonous atmosphere. So it's just the perfect size. And the fact of the matter is that Earth is the only planet that is equipped with an atmosphere to sustain life. It's about 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 1% all these other mixtures. Now that's the way the Earth is made. The way the Earth is located approximately 93 million miles away from the sun. And it actually tilts on its axis. So and I'll explain that in a second here. The Earth, if the Earth was any further away, then we would freeze to death. We'd be just ice. If the Earth was any closer to the sun, we would burn up. And now we maintain that space between the sun and the Earth while rotating on our axis at almost 67,000 miles per hour, and it rotates on the axis to let it warm and cool each side of the Earth. So all the Earth gets an even amount of um, heat and coolness, and so that keeps the Earth going. Um, Even a fraction variance of the distance between the sun and the Earth, and life would not be possible on the Earth. Just think about that for a minute. Now, our moon, our moon is the perfect size and distance from the Earth for its gravitational pull. Now, the moon is very important because what it does is that it is about 239,000 miles from Earth, and it affects our seas, our oceans. It allows our oceans to regenerate, to not to grow stagnant, and so the moon's gravitational pull is always pulling on the oceans, and it also does not allow the water to go onto the continents, so we don't flood. It stays where it's at. It just churns a lot. It just churns a lot. And speaking of water, well, I have in this little bottle right here. Oh, I want to put the label on there. Water is needed for every single living being. And the earth is made set up about 70% of water. And in fact, it's colorless, odorless, pretty much tasteless unless you add stuff to it. And no living creature, no living anything can live without water. No matter how much you need or how little you need. It has a wide margin between a boiling point, which is 212 degrees, and a freezing point, which is 32 degrees. That's 180 degrees difference between boiling and freezing. And what that does is that allows our bodies to maintain a temperature of 98.6 degrees no matter how cold or warm it is outside. So it allows us to, during the summer, stay cool. It allows us in the winter to stay warm. So it allows us to live in environments of temperature changes. It also is a universal solvent, and it is chemically neutral. This allows the various chemicals to be able to be chemicals, minerals, nutrients to be carried out throughout our bodies without affecting the makeup of those substances, and it enables food, medicines, nutrition, minerals, stuff like that to be absorbed and used by our bodies. It has a unique surface tension. In other words, it can go up against gravity. Now, you think, how's that happen? Well, look at the trees. Look at trees. Way at the top. Now, how's water going to get all the way up there? It's because that's the way it's made. It has the ability to do that. It really has that ability to get to the top of the trees. Now, 97% of the water on our planet is ocean salt water. And so we have to have a system, and Earth supplies us with that system of purification and supply that sustains life on this planet and utilizes recycled water. What happens is that water is evaporated up into the clouds, and clouds are formed, and that water, it's rain, gets dispersed all over the land, all over the earth. Now, with that evaporation, it leaves the salt in the ocean. So we are getting the water without the salt, and that's what evaporation does. And again, how could this stuff be happening by accident? Don't you think that somebody would have designed it that way? Now, there was one minor point that I wanted to get to that I read that as I said previously, that nitrogen is in 78% of our atmosphere. Now, in order for us to grow food, our soil has to contain nitrogen. But how does it get from the air to the ground? Lightning. 100,000 strikes daily on this planet causes the nitrogen to be pretty much planted into the earth as plant food, and makes us able to have fertile land and to grow food. And again, Did this happen by accident? I don't think so. Let's move on. The fact that okay, now let's talk about life. Life. Where did life come from? How did we get life? Well, things that cohere because of a purpose or a function had to have a non-human designer who designed them with that function in mind. There's just no way that any of this stuff was done by randomness. Organs of living things. Let's take the eye, for example. You know, our eye's got a cornea, it's got a lens, it's got an iris, it's got eyelids, it's got a retina, so on and so on. Now, did all that just come about willy-nilly? Of course not. It had to be designed by somebody. It had to be designed by somebody, a non-human creator, designer, what have you. Because of the fact is that we are designed so perfectly. We have, I mean, and I'll go through this stuff here that tells you about. Okay, let's kind of go with the complexity of our bodies. We have a brain, we have an eye, we have a heart, we have kidneys, we have a gallbladder, we have spleen. We've got, we've got all this stuff that allows us to live. We have blood flowing through our bodies, and yet people think that this came about because of randomness. Now, because of our complexity, and I've got a thing here that science has estimated that the odds of that intelligent life exists, easy for me to say, exists here on the earth due to a non-directed process. In other words, being created is one, actually no, it's 1 in 10 to the 2 billionth power. Now, this is what it looks like when it's written. So what you would do is you would take that number 10, times it by itself 2 billion times, and 1 in those 10 times 2 billion times, or what have you, is the chances of us not being intelligently designed. I think the odds are pretty good that, in fact, we do have an intelligent designer. That there is nothing that just happens. So now we have in our bodies and in our cells something called DNA. Now DNA is a code. It is like an instructional manual that programs a cell's behavior. And that all instruction, all teaching, all training comes with intent. We just don't learn stuff and just learn it. Everything's learned by intent. And DNA is a full instruction manual. In every cell of our body exists a detailed instruction code. It's made up of 4 chemicals that are abbreviated as A, T, G, and C. Now they were arranged approximately like this. That's a G. Up to 3 billion letters. And that's in each and every cell. Now, human beings on an average have 70 trillion cells. That's more than fills several sets of encyclopedias is in our body. But how did this info end up in our body? How did we get this information? Was it just by accident? No, it was not just by accident. And because of the fact that it was not by accident, you have these they are chemical. The DNA are chemicals inside of our body that tells our bodies how to develop. It also tells our body, how to grow and what we're supposed to look like, and in this and that or the other. And there is no way that this could have happened without somebody constructing it. You got to use common sense in this. Is that you can't have something happen so precise and so complex without somebody behind it directing it. Because of the DNA and the way that everything, the complex and the structure and everything, requires intelligence. You have to have some sort of intelligence behind it, and it can't be by a random process. Now, even on a planet that's full of life, science can't explain how life began, the origin of life. Before you even look at evolution or natural theory, what have you, you have to look at the origin. How did a person become alive? Are we just a bunch of cells put together with some skills? No, of course not. We are a creation from God. We were created with all this stuff to be able to live. We were given a soul. That's what animals don't have. Now, each and every cell is as complex as the body that it makes up. And the fact of the matter is that since everything in the universe has to have a cause, and I mean everything, as I said before, and since, as I said before, God's the only one that's outside of the universe, he has to be the cause of the universe. He also has to be the cause of life. Gotta fire it up in the H2O. So, Scripture's showing us that God didn't just create us, he loves us. And he wants to take care of us. And he wants the best for everybody within his will. And so because the Bible tells us this stuff, that we do have hope for the future. Now, I want to talk about some of this stuff that is pertaining to the human body, our complexity. Is that the human brain processes more than 1 million messages a second. Think about that. I've been on for almost 23 minutes, and times that by 60 times 1 million. That's how many messages that I've had and you've had in the last 23 minutes. Hopefully you're still watching. Everything that you hear, everything you see, everything that you smell, taste, feel, is processed by the brain. Your brain is processed. It processes all your emotions, all your thoughts, your memories, keeps track of the way your bodies work, function of your body, your breathing, your eye movement, whether or not you're hungry, muscle movement, stuff like that. And the brain weighs the importance of all this stuff that's going on, all these messages and all this and all that, and weeds out the unimportant stuff, and it lets us concentrate and work more efficiently with the information that we need. It weighs this, it takes out it filters things to let you do specific things. Now, the brain functions differently than other organs. There's an intelligence to it. The brain is the center of a complex computer system that is in our body. And we have, and let me see what it sends. It computes billions of bits of data throughout our body. And the info controls every action, no matter how slight. It's controlled by the brain. Nerves carry our information back and forth like the computer system. And so it is, there has to be a design to it. Now, our human brain contains, and I quote this, 100 million neurons and 100 trillion synapses. In other words, that's all the communication that's going on in your head, and that's what happens in your brain. Your brain isn't just a big glob that's in your head that was just shoved there. It had to be designed. Now, in this very moment, our brain sees what we see, but it comes through the eyes. The eyes can distinguish between 7 million colors. Who knew there were 7 million colors? 7 million colors. Has automatic focusing and it handles astonishing 1.5 million messages a second. Wow. Modern cameras do kind of work on the same way they focus and what have you. And saying that, evolution doesn't focus on how the eyes are created or anything. Evolution focuses on mutations and other stuff like that. And that's why I say evolution's just a bunch of malarkey. People may say it's science. Ooh, it's sciencey. Who created science? God created science. Now, the fine-tuning, because of the fact that we are fine-tuned, proves there's an existence of a designer. And science has calculated those odds in that's 10 billion to the 124th power. So what that would be is you would take 10 billion, times it by itself 124 times, in one of those is the chances that we were just created. I mean, not created, but we were here. There's just no way. Our universe has been fine-tuned to support our life. There were so many things, like this distance between the sun and the earth. There are so many things that are just so perfect, like water and air and everything else. Everything is just so close that if it went slightly one way, slightly another way, life wouldn't exist. And that's the same way here it is too with us, is that in order for our life to exist, molecules have to exist and atoms have to bond together to exist. Now the Earth has an electromagnetic field, and if it was ever so slightly altered, I think it's above 3/10 of 1% more or 2% less, molecules could not be formed, therefore life would not exist. But it is that fine-tuning that is so, it's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Now let's go to a couple more things before we go. Sound. Now sound is processed inside of our ears. The outer ear operates in air, we all know that, and captures a sound. Now the sound waves will go down the auditory canal to the cochlea, which is kind of shaped like a seashell. And it's filled with liquid. Well, science is one of the biggest problems for science is trying to figure out how sound goes from transferring sound from air to water. But there are 3 tiny bones called the ossicles, I do believe that's how you pronounce it, enables us to hear properly. Again, by accident, our heart is a muscle that pumps blood through about 100,000 miles of blood vessels. 100,000 miles of blood vessels. Blood carries food and oxygen to every part of the body. We know that. We need blood. Blood is the life. There's life in the blood. The heart pumps an average of 1.5 gallons of blood per minute, and that would be enough in one day to fill 50-gallon drums, so more than that. And that's in a day. And that shows right there that life is in the blood. The blood is important. Blood is the life. You have no blood, you have no life. I.e., you don't have the shedding of blood of Jesus Christ, no life. No everlasting life. And did you know that there are 23 elements, including oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, calcium, iron, all these other ones that exist not only in the human body, but in the earth? Oxygen, carbon, all this, even trace amounts of copper, zinc, and aluminum. These chemicals cannot arrange themselves to create a human being. You have to have somebody breathe life into that mixture. And who did that? Who did that but God? Well, you know what? I'm running short out of time. I am getting ready to go out of here. I'd like to thank you for watching. This is the first of, I want to do with my sign here now. Cupp Talks. There we go. Here we go. Cupp Talks. All right, see you. Bye.